At some point in your 30s, the question about whether or not you want to be in shape is not so much the issue. At this point, it's more about how you can even make it happen. Life's changing, priorities are kicking in. It's not necessarily about motivation, it's about actually bringing it to life. So in this video, we're gonna walk you through what that looks like and how to close the gap. The biggest difference in life now between where it was 10 years ago and today is that the demands and the stakes just look a lot different. When you're in your 20s and you don't really have a lot of responsibilities, makes it pretty easy to just kind of squeeze in whatever you need to, whenever you need to. And now that you've got a career, less time, you've got more responsibility, the stakes are higher, just makes it a little bit more difficult to stay on top of stuff. So it might be parenting, it might be parenting your parents, taking care of your parents as they age. It might be just the career demands. Financial pressure definitely seems to stack up when you're in your 30s too, especially if you're trying to build security for the long haul and any type of opportunity to retire someday. It just gets kind of tough. So when you're at that point where things are really starting to change, it just makes it a little bit more difficult to really prioritize your workouts, right? You got all these different things pulling at you. You got the mental load coming at you from all angles. And yeah, your health is still important. And obviously you're able to, really prioritize the value of it. But getting time and energy to do it is definitely a different story. It's not like you don't care, but your capacity changes. And when that capacity changes, it always feels like fitness is like the last thing on your agenda. So I think the big thing here is just like, it's okay. It's not an excuse. It's real. What you're dealing with is definitely a legitimate thing. I think a lot of coaches ignore that, and I feel like it doesn't get the attention that it necessarily deserves. That you're carrying all this stuff. You've got this workload. You've got so much on your plate, and it is harder, but it doesn't make it any less important. So we'll keep working through kind of next steps for how to make sure it stays integrated into your routine. One of the biggest differences as you get into your 30s and beyond is that your body is just genuinely different. You're in a position now where you aren't as young and sprightly as you might have been before. And part of that is why we're doing warm-up sets here before we get into lifting anything heavier. It's not that you can't still lift heavy. You just have to be really smart about the way you do it. That way you're not putting yourself in a position to just jump right into warm-up. Big part of why you saw me doing some of that stuff earlier. Another thing too is recovery is just something that takes way longer. As you get older, you can't go through this train 3 days in a row type situation and expect your body to recover and rebound. Usually I recommend doing something like 2 days on and then 1 day off if you can, or alternating and trying to get a break in between all your training days. But that just puts you in a position where you can have some like intentional strength days or get after days, and then other days where you're a little bit more intentionally focused on recovery. Another one too, like your hormone shift, right? So the cortisol response, the sleep quality, the sleep quantity. If you have young kids, sleep is obviously very different than if you don't have young kids. And obviously experience a lot of that. But even just the stress that comes from having more stuff on your plate and how that affects that just accumulation of stress, the cortisol response. And then if you're in your 40s and you get into your 50s, obviously you have the biological hormone shifts. Women understand the perimenopausal shift, men the andropausal decrease in testosterone. A lot of that stuff is inevitable, but some of it even more driven by habits and lifestyle. Take a quick breather here, get a set in. Another thing that's big is just shifting exercise selection. Like this is a trap bar deadlift, whereas maybe normally I would have done maybe more of like a straight bar deadlift, but the axial or spinal load on a straight bar deadlift is gonna be a lot more pressure on the old lower back. Or something like this, you can still load in a really safe manner. Technique is kind of a half squat, half hinge, but I can kind of play around with that too. So it's just that the old programs you did, they aren't gonna work the same as they did before. You're not 22, your body's aging, you don't have the time to train 5-6 days a week, which a lot of programs ignore that. You really only need about 3, maybe 4 hours, 45 to 60 minutes to get where you wanna be. And it needs to be specific to where you're at. So most people you see, they pick one of two options. Option one, they just grind it out, get the barbell out, load that shit up, and get after it. And you may be able to get through it, but you'll pay for it on the back end, which is gonna decrease your recovery and your ability to get back in and train again. Or number two, you just give up entirely. Neither one of those are ideal. Neither one of them are gonna get you where you wanna be. Option three is the ideal. You gotta adapt and you gotta adjust. So the right exercise, the right program, the right frequency, the right recovery time, just making sure that you're taking all the things that add in that cumulative life stress and the cumulative training stress and putting yourself in a position where you can do it sustainably and consistently. Decision fatigue is another big underrated struggle for people. This whole concept is just the idea that your brain's like a bank account and every little thing you have to do throughout the course of the day is a withdrawal from that mental bank account. And being able to really like give as many investments in, prioritize your health, prioritize your fitness, your nutrition, your recovery, your lifestyle, it gives you more bandwidth to be able to make those decisions. So everything from like, what am I gonna have for breakfast today, to how do I handle the situation at work? How do I have this hard conversation with my friend? What are we gonna do for dinner tonight? How am I gonna get my kid from one activity to another? Every one of those decisions takes a withdrawal from your mental bank account. And if you're not training consistently, you're not putting any deposits in. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people overlook, and one of the things they don't really think about is that you only have so much capacity. So you may be able to have a really high level of care. It's not like people don't want to be in shape, like we said when we started. It's not a matter of if you want to be in shape, it's how you make it work. And people get it backwards. They go through the whole day and they're navigating this massive cognitive load around, what workout am I going to do? What form is right? How hard should I push? Where is the opportunity for me to really plan out my food? What do I eat? There's so many decisions that need to be made that I think this is where people forget about what the value of a coach is, right? If you're in a situation where you can offload all of those things and you can free up mental space, you are not making a ton of withdrawals from your mental bank account because you have somebody to help you navigate that whole aspect and that whole cognitive load around what to do, how to do it. You're limited on time, you don't have enough energy, you got all these other things that you're juggling. That's why you hire a coach, so you don't have to think about that stuff, because it's not like you don't care, you just don't have the capacity. And like we said, one of the biggest issues is that people either say, F it, I'm just gonna go get after it, and they get in this stress loop. They do hard things because they're stressed, they do things that are stressful on their body, and then that cumulative load of training stress and life stress only compounds and gets worse. So yeah, like going and doing a hard workout feels great mentally in the moment, but if you're already waxed, that's the worst thing in the world for you. And on the other end of it, if you can't really wrap your head around it, people just quit. And once again, neither one of those options are legit. It's just a matter of making sure that you're in a situation where you recognize like you are probably carrying a lot more than you were when you were in your 20s. You have a lot more responsibility, a lot more financial pressure. You have so much more cognitive load. And that decision fatigue is something that people in the industry don't really talk about. And it's like, if you can offload some of those things, then you're in a position to where you can start to really focus on your effort and your consistency instead of what to do, when to do, how to do it. You can get the most out of your time and your energy. So I think that's one of the probably like most underrated struggles that people face, is getting into that situation where they're trying to ask themselves to do everything perfectly like they're a professional, but you don't really have a lot of room for error, so go hire a coach. Because even though you're in your 30s, or your 40s, or your 50s, or your 60s, you can still train hard. You just gotta be smarter about it. A lot of people think having a coach is one of those things where it's like, I need a coach for motivation. And I think a lot of people mix up what a coach does. It's not that like cheesy, rah-rah energy. Certainly some people are like that, but like good coaching is not the cheesy accountability you think of. It's someone who can provide you structure, support, and tough love when you need it. Someone who's gonna give you some strategic oversight so that you can put a plan together around your life, something that is adapting to your schedule, something that will accommodate your stress load, your specific body, your needs, your goals. That's what individualization looks like in coaching, is being in a position where you can really put together a game plan that's specific to you. You gotta have something that you can adjust and it can adapt. As you probably understand, life isn't perfect and things are going to change. So you need something that's gonna help drive consistency and prioritize what's important when things do get crazy. Because once again, a lot of times what happens to people is they get in a situation where life isn't perfect and they're too far in things to be able to see it for what it actually is. And when you're in the mix, you can't have that big picture oversight to really give you what you need to make sure that you are following the right strategy to get the most out of what you're trying to do. And remember, when you have that strategic oversight, you have someone to help you really individualize something, and you're in a position where when life gets crazy, you can be able to make the adjustment with somebody else's support to give you the tough love, the support you need when things don't go perfect, because life isn't perfect, to really prioritize and adjust and adapt so you stay consistent when things get crazy, not just quit. And remember, if you have less mental energy into it, more support, more structure, more strategy, you can put more effort into it. And when you have less mental energy, more effort, you're gonna be doing more action versus getting stuck in thought. So it's worth considering to look into what it looks like to get a coach. So while we're on the topic of the bigger picture, I think the biggest issue is that people don't really think about this the same way they do everything else when it comes to needing an expertise. I mean, if you want your taxes done, of course, if you want the simple route, you can obviously do it yourself, but the more complex things get, the further into life you get, the more things you have going on. In your fitness, it gets more complex, right? We talked about the, shortened bandwidth, increase in responsibilities. And if you've got a issue with your car, you're probably gonna go see a mechanic. If you've got an issue with your teeth, you're probably gonna go see a dentist. If you are in a situation where you need to do some major overhaul with landscaping, you're gonna call somebody who's a specialist there. And for whatever reason, people just look at fitness differently. I don't know if it's that, like any industry, sometimes you run into things where you have good and bad versions. And if you've only been exposed to a bad version of what personal training looks like, then maybe that's your perception of what it looks like to work with every coach. And unfortunately, a bad experience can ruin someone's perception around things. But, every pro, there's good versions and there's bad versions. There's good doctors, there's bad doctors. There's people that are good at their job, there's bad at their job. And we kind of already gave you all the insight to look for a great coach. A lot of it really comes down to finding someone who can do the things that we talked about. Because when you have so much going on in your life, once again, there's just only so much you can focus on. And when you're really struggling to bring that to life, having that expertise definitely helps. And you can certainly do it on your own, but there's a price to pay with that. I've heard people refer to this as like an ignorance tax. It takes a lot more trial and error. So if you don't know what you're doing, you gotta try things, spend time, figure out if they work, reevaluate, and it just takes a lot longer. So if you could just wash all that and you could hire a pro and have all the answers from the beginning, think about the time you save with something like that. And really, I know people talk about time and money and fear being kind of the ultimate things that hold them back. But time is the resource you can't get more of. And if you spend all your time trying to figure it out on your own, you're spending a lot of time that you won't get back. Where if you pay for something, even if it doesn't work the way you want it to, you've got a chance to learn from that. So instead of thinking I wasted money, you learned a lesson and it cost you X amount of money. You can make that money back. You can't make the time back. So that's one of the biggest values of going out and actually hiring a professional. Training in your 30s and beyond does not have to mean the beginning of the decline. Obviously, as you age, things will change, but this can actually be the most strategic and dialed in you have ever been. And you can train hard. You can do what you want. You can improve your health and your performance. You just have to be more strategic. You gotta have the right structure, you gotta have the right support. And if you need help with that and are in the Kansas City area, go on over to our website, schedule a free no sweat intro. We'd love to chat with you and see if it's a good fit. If there's anything else we can do for you, leave a comment below on any future topics you'd like to see. We'll catch you next time on Inside of Avexia.